howdy, welcome to Hang the Critic with Josh Ball. I'm Josh Ball and this is Hang the Critic. The next director on my list of underrated directors was a part of the film industry for a long time before he started directing movies. He worked with George Lucas on the original Star Wars trilogy, but when he started directing movies, he didn't half-ass it. But strangely enough, they're almost all exclusively, I wouldn't call them bad movies, but they're all cult classics. A lot of people grew up with these movies and loved them. Now the first one he did was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Rick Moranis' classic inventor whose machine accidentally shrinks his kids and his kids have to make their way through the lawn back to the house to get themselves bigger again. A classic of special effects and visual effects, spawned a lot of sequels which were all pretty good. I've always loved Rick Moranis. He's very consistently good for a laugh. He's just synonymous with those movies. People can't think of those movies without thinking of him.
Just gotta keep our eyes open.
The next one he did was The Rocketeer, which is sort of part of a trilogy, even though they're all made by different people, of these pulp comic movies which came out in the 90s that didn't do very well, but are remembered very fondly. The Rocketeer, Dick Tracy with Warren Beatty, and The Shadow with Alec Baldwin. The Rocketeer is not the best movie in the world. It does have its flaws, but it's solid entertainment. Some of the effects stand out pretty well, some of them not so much, but it's worth watching just for the aesthetic. The Rocketeer and the jetpack, the period superhero is a fascinating concept to me. I think that's one of the appealing things about those pulp comic movies is that they're all set in like the 30s and 40s, so it's got that fresh aesthetic to this very commonplace genre. It's like it's extremely commonplace now. Superheroes have been done to death.
How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
Yeah, it had Billy Campbell, young Jennifer Connelly, Alan Arkin, and Timothy Dalton as the villain. Interesting thing about Timothy Dalton, even though he's famous for having played James Bond, I've much preferred him in non-James Bond roles, like Hot Fuzz. I loved how in that movie, everything that came out of his mouth was incredibly suspect.
Nonsense. I'm sure if we bashed your head in, all sorts of secrets would come tumbling out.
Just go, is this guy a murderer? Everything he says sounds very murdery. Then he was one of the directors on The Pagemaster, and I've talked about The Pagemaster before, and I've even written about it on the Facebook page. Pagemaster was a childhood favorite of mine. It inspired a great love of classic genre literature, and it was partially live action and partially animated. And Joe Johnston did the live action segments, and you know, they're up to its usual quality. Like they really draw you into the story. Like I love the scene between Macaulay Culkin and Christopher Lloyd. I know that entire scene off by heart.
All I want is
adventure, of course. You're a boy who loves adventure, brimming with wicked demons, cutthroat pirates.
Even though the intensity of Christopher Lloyd's character in that movie rings some alarm bells in this day and age. And then after that, Joe Johnston did Jumanji, and oh my god, my childhood was like based on Jumanji. I was obsessed with it. I wanted to find the Jumanji board game, and even though it was incredibly dangerous, I wanted to have that adventure. The CGI isn't up to today's standards, but it kind of works. It sort of enforces, strangely enough, that these animals aren't real animals, they're fantasy animals. You know what I mean? It's almost to its credit that the animals look a bit fake. Still one of my favorites. Robin Williams. I always loved Robin Williams. I deeply miss him. Jonathan Hyde. Very underrated Jonathan Hyde as Van Pelt the Hunter. He was a very underrated villain.
Now anyone asks, you didn't get this here. You're not a postal worker, are you?
I haven't seen the most recent one, but I have enjoyed the reboot Jumanji movies. The fresh take on it has really been to its credit. Then there was Jurassic Park 3, which is one of the lesser quality Jurassic Parks, leaving aside completely the Jurassic Worlds. I mean, that's a whole other ballpark. Again, there's nothing particularly bad about Jurassic Park 3. It's very watchable, entertaining movie. It's very sort of isolated story. Sam Neill and Laura Dern are the only recurring characters in it. But it's a nice sort of fun adventure movie. I still enjoy it, genuinely. Like William H. Macy and Taya Leone, if they pronounced that right, were perfectly serviceable, and then they did a good job. Like they always do a good job.
What are you doing? Let's go!
Then he did The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, Sir Anthony Hopkins, and Hugo Weaving, which was a remake of the Universal Studios classic The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. It was a good movie. I did like the prosthetic effects. As I said in my previous video, werewolf movies should always be practical effects, and for the most part they are. When they're in the full werewolf getup, that is practical effects. The transformations were CGI, but they were good. I will say that. Particularly the scene where Benicio is transforming inside the insane asylum, and he's like, I will kill all of them. That's good stuff. The tone and the aesthetic, it was very cool and atmospheric. I really liked that about it. The thing that I didn't like about it is what they did with the father and son relationship. It was like the exact opposite of what it was in the original film, and that was one of the things that I loved so much about the original film. Then he did Captain America First Avenger, and that's sort of calling back actually to the Rocketeer, the period superhero movie, which for many reasons makes the first Captain America movie really stand out in that ocean of Marvel Studios films that they've done. I'm getting admittedly a bit tired of superhero movies and Marvel Studios stuff. For me, they all sort of blur into each other. They've lost their appeal to me. There's also a movie called Shrunk, and I've heard of that. It's a reboot of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Usually I'm skeptical about reboots, but I'm excited for that one because Rick Moranis is coming back. He's out of retirement. He was in a commercial with Ryan Reynolds, and I was just watching that commercial, just like, it's Rick Moranis.
A huge fan.
Oh, stop it. Come on,
No,
stop it.
seriously.
Anyway, that's all I got for this episode. Hope you like, subscribe, follow Facebook, follow Instagram, leave a comment. If you have a favorite Joe Johnston movie, tell me about it. Keep watching movies, and I'll see you when I see you.
Anybody up for iced tea? I'm gonna make some tea.